What is going on, everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. I want to thank you for joining me for another replay battle. Today I've got a pretty iconic 1v1 for you on the Pelennor fields. You can see Minas Tirith in the background there, looming, ever-present. And taking to the field today, we have the forces of the Dark Tower and the White, that being Gondor and Mordor. So it's a really close battle against one of the fellow developers. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get into the army comps and then into the replay itself. I hope you guys enjoy it. Now, the first army we're going to look at today is the forces of Mordor, being commanded by yours truly. And I've got a couple units here of the mounted Númenórean Shield Guard, and Númenóreans in 0.95 are really, really good. They are comparatively rare. I think Mordor and Umbar have a fair amount of Númenórean units that they can bring, but Mordor, that's mostly because they have really strong... The philosophy behind Mordor is that they have strong elites, but not the greatest infantry, and you'll really see that epitomized in this battle today, and I think Umbar has some as well. But in any case, I've got a couple units of these mounted Númenórean Shield Guard, very strong Lancer units, a lot of shield value and a lot of armor behind them, but naturally, being Lancers, they do suffer a little bit against other cavalry with a -3 penalty. Over here I have another unit of Númenóreans. Most of the mounted companies for Mordor, actually all of them exclusively, are going to be Númenóreans, just to kind of set them apart as the ruling caste of the forces of the Dark Land. But in any case, I've got I've got a unit here of the Temple Inquisitors who are really strong melee cav. But despite their lack of a shield, they've got about 11 armor value, which means they will stand up to arrows real nicely. So usually another unit of melee cav or some spears or a combined arms approach is a really good idea to take these guys down. But my mainline infantry, of course, being composed of Uruks here. You can see that they have been merged with the Mordor Moranon units, and they are now an upgrade. So this is, of course, the upgraded unit. It's got an extra 1 or 2 armor, I believe. Over here I've got some dismounted Temple Inquisitors, rather, who are as strong as they've ever been. They have 2 HP, but unlike the mounted units, they have 2 HP, but they're a little bit smaller in number. However, that does make them much, much more deadly. Over here I got my General's Bodyguard unit, which is the Nazgul. So no longer will you be seeing a orc hanging out with the Nazgul. I believe that custom bodyguard units all have different generals that they can use now, like the Gondor units, for example. If you saw our last battle with our 1v1v Gondor and Dol Amroth, then yeah, you've seen that there's different generals for different kinds of units. So this one happens to be a Nazgul general, and that's going to be him hanging out on the flank right there. And yeah, let's move on here. I've got a lot of orc fodder as well. I've got about 4 units of orc fodder just because I wanted a cheap front line of spears, which is a tactic that I find I will be employing a lot moving in to the 0.95 release, just because numbers are so important. Over here I got, I believe, 3 units of upgraded Moranon Guard, who are, they're acceptable spearmen. Mostly their large numbers makes up for their lack of combat skill. I've also got a couple units of orc javelins, a unit I don't think you've seen before. They are a spear unit, and they do a decent amount of damage, but they have very, very low stats. I think they have like 1 across the board, so like 1 armor, 1 melee defense, 1 shield value. So yeah, it's definitely not a great unit to get stuck into melee, but they do have some defense versus cavalry. Over here I got some Númenórean Shadow Guard. You guys are very familiar with them at this point. And of course I've got the Temple Guard. Only really a couple ranged units in this force. I wanted it to be more of like a rush, kind of overwhelming, enveloping army, rather than something that would stand and fight and skirmish with Gondor, especially Gondor's heavily armored units. Would not be a good idea. But yeah, the Temple Guard, now AP, very good for picking out heavy cavalry units or just priority targets. They don't have a lot of ammunition. I think they've got a little bit more than crossbows. They do have a nice range advantage over crossbows, so you need to pick your targets wisely, otherwise they will run out of ammunition really quickly. But I think that just about does it for my army, so let's go ahead and let's see what the forces of Gondor have brought to the battle today. Across the field for me, we have the forces of Gondor being commanded by WK, our very talented map maker. And he's got a very interesting approach here. He's got more of a quantity approach, backed up with some pretty decent elite units as well. So he's got, I believe, 2 units of Citadel Guard who are AP spears. Very heavily armored. They cost about 1,000 though, so you do pay for it a little bit. And you can bring 2 of them before the red price increase. But they are very, very good. And he's got them stationed on his wings so that his second line here will be very, very sturdy. Out in front, he's got a lot of Gondor militia, now known as the Ramas Ekor garrison, which is very appropriate because the Ramas Ekor is the wall that encircles the Pelennor fields and is Minas Tirith's first line of defense. And who else is the first line of defense if not the Gondorian militia? So he's got the Ramas Ekor garrison, the light infantry, and he's got the garrison archers as well out in front. So very much a a quantity approach here to his front lines, very similar to the approach that I've taken with Mordor. Now over on this end we have the veterans of Osgiliath, who do not have their armor upgrades, but they are still a very potent hybrid archer / heavy infantry unit. And yeah, they've got a lot of range, way more range than most of my the Mordor skirmish roster, except maybe the Numenorians I think can go toe-to-toe with them in terms of range, but they've got the armor to win a skirmish fight pretty handily, which is why I'm going to try and avoid that in this battle if at all possible. Now, his second line is composed of I think 2 units of the Guards of Osgiliath. Now, Gondor gets really powerful spears. They get a +2 bonus to their attack and melee defense, and they're significantly cheaper. So it is very easy to bring these guys as a solid support core for your main line, just as WK has done here. And he's in behind. He's got, I believe, a couple of units of the Polar Gear Marines, who have got a little bit of an overhaul. They're not quite so bright in like beige color. They're a little bit darker, more chainmail-y, a little bit more appropriate for Gondor's overall aesthetic. But they are no less potent for the slight change in appearance. Over here we have the Kaer Andra Swordmasters, formerly known as the Winged Swordsmen. And they're very good. Of the human two-handed units, these guys probably perform the best in terms of having a very balanced stat roster. They've got a lot of armor, more armor than is usual, and about 10 or 11 melee defense and 12 attacks. So they're really, really good, especially against low-tier orcs. Over here we have the Wardens of the White Tower, who are honestly a big, big problem for my army. I don't have a lot of AP, as I'm sure you've noticed. So heavily armored units like this with a ton of shield value and things like that are going to be a nightmare for me to have to take on. And same goes for the Sons of Argonath as well. They are more or less unchanged, except for both these units are 2 HP, as you can tell by their low, by their low unit numbers. And out on his flanks, he's got 2 units of Peneth Galen Cavalry, who are very much a replacement for the Gondor Knights. Now, the Gondor Knights might be making a comeback as melee cap, just a capped at 1 heavy melee cap unit, just so Gondor has an answer to melee cavalry, because melee cavalry can be very, very strong against factions that don't have it. So it's possible that they will get them back, but for the moment, the Peneth Galen Cavalry are an acceptable Lancer substitute. They've got a lot of armor and shield value, and they can really hit hard on the charge and do well in melee as well. But I think that just about does it for WK's army, so without any further ado, let's get into the replay. The battle's going to begin with some pretty aggressive play on my end, but let's take a quick look at the order of battle here, because there's a few things I want to draw your attention to. Now, I mounted Temple Inquisitors, so they were kind of hidden inside of my Ruiks, just as I'm trying to be a little bit sneaky, and I don't want WK to know what I have and be able to counter it before it's already on top of him and already happening. I did the same thing with my Nazgul, but they seem to be a little bit faster than the rest of my units, so I've got my Nazgul kind of sneakily hidden in here amongst my first line of orc fodder, and they're going to be able to, I think the Nazgul actually inspire units around them, but there's a few other things that the Nazgul and the Temple Inquisitors do, and why they're placed the way they are. Now, I really want to try and break him on this wing, and just kind of focus on holding on the other side, and to that end, I've deployed both of my units, like the Nazgul and the Temple Inquisitors, who both cause fear. Now, against his lower tier militia units, that is going to be a really big problem, because as you guys, I'm sure, have noticed in many of the previous videos on both my channel and elsewhere, morale is a big factor in this. So I'm going to try and leverage that for all that it's worth by enveloping him and hitting him with some fear units and, yeah, trying to cause a mass rout. So that is definitely a viable strategy. So WK is going to move forward here to protect his main archer line with a big sally from his Ramus Ekor garrison and the rest of the main body of his infantry. So a big general charge here, getting ready to receive the first line of my orc fodder. Now over here where the Citadel Guard are, they're going to run right into those orc fodder, and they're going to massacre them. My orc fodder definitely do not have a chance there, but that is why I've got my Temple Inquisitors where they are as well. I want to be able to, as I said, break this flank, but in order to do that, I have to get through the iron wall that is the Citadel Guard. Now, over on the other end, you can see the rest of my forces just generally clashing with those of the Gondorians, but the Gondorians have the quality to my massive, massive quantity. So I'm going to be moving in on both flanks over here with my Mountain Numenorian Shield Guard. A little bit of a micro error here, lapse certainly. In micro, my Numenorian Shield Guard going to take some enfilading fire on their unshielded side, so a few of them are actually going to fall real quick. Over on this end, I've got my Numenorian Lancers, and I'm trying to get a nice side charge here on those Peneth Galen Cavalry. I want to wipe out his cavalry first before I use my Lancers on his back lines, but unfortunately I'm not really supporting this very well. with a push for my Temple Inquisitors. They're a little bit lagging behind, and I'm going to have to bring them up quite quickly in order to consolidate any gains that my Lancers manage to make. Now, I'm definitely worried about charging into the Peneth Galen Cavalry with those Pelargir Marines right there. I don't want them to be able to toss their Javelin payloads into me. So at the same time as I'm charging in to his Peneth Galen Lancers, I'm going to move in with my Temple Inquisitors as well. But unfortunately for my mounted Temple Inquisitors, they are going to take a Javelin volley on the approach. And I think a few of them are going to fall there, but they've got the armor to stand up to mid-tier Javelins like the Pelargir Marines. So they are going to manage to connect, and that's going to be a big hit right there for Gondor. Those Pelargir Marines are really suffering quite grievously at the hands of my mounted Numenorians. Over on this end, my mounted Numenorian Shield Guard not doing so great against the Peneth Galen Cavalry. The Peneth Galen Cavalry are not quite as good as Numenorians in the sense they don't have as much armor or as much melee defense, but backed up with those Wardens of the White Tower and the Peneth Galen Cavalry, they match up reasonably well, but they're not as good as the Numenorians, so they can hold their ground, but backed up with the Wardens of the White Tower, that's going to be a big problem, especially with all that arrow fire coming in, a lot of supporting arrow fire from WK. Now, over on this side, I've had to retreat my mounted Numenorian Shield Guard to try and salvage my back line. So you can see one of his units of Peneth Galen Cavalry have managed to get in behind my lines, run smack into my Orc Javelins, and send them fleeing off the field. Now, their next target is, of course, going to be my Numenorian Shadow Guard. Now, I'm using my fire arrows here just because I want to try and exploit the low morale of some of these Gondor units. And these guys definitely have the accuracy to counteract the debuff that fire arrows gives you somewhat. But unfortunately, they're being interrupted right now with a big flank charge from the Peneth Galen Cavalry. Smack on into my Numenorians. I'm going to lose about a seventh of the unit there, which is pretty devastating. My mounted Numenorian Shield Guard still playing catch-up. WK really giving me a run for my money right now and disrupting my back lines, which I really need at this point. Over here on my Temple Guard, focusing down on the Peneth Galen Cavalry. I really want to destroy these guys and get this over and done with, just so I can protect this second unit over here of Might Orc Javelins, who are tossing their payloads into, I believe, the Guards of Osgiliath, who are mixed in there, along with the Ramessekor garrison. Yeah, you can see some pretty devastating Javelin volleys going into that Gondor main line, and that is slowly but surely helping me win the infantry fight, at least a little bit. Over on this end, though, I have definitely been destroyed. You can see all of my Orcs have just melted in the face of those elite spears backed up with the Ramessekor garrison. So now I've got a big problem here on my left flank, which is essentially non-existent at this point. Over here you can see some of the Gondorian elites mixed in with the Pelargir Marines, and they have actually driven back my mounted Numenorian Cavalry once again. Now, I don't know what happened to the rest of my melee cap, but oh yeah, I see what they're doing. They're disrupting the Gondor archer line right now, trying to get into the rear of the Ramessekor garrison. I really need to turn this infantry fight around as quickly as possible, and fear-causing unit like these mounted Temple Inquisitors are a great way to do that, because if I don't, my line is just going to be steadily rolled up by that inexorable advance from the Gondorians. Now over in this, the Victoria Citadel Guard, who have just shattered my Mornon Guard, have managed to get a nice charge there into my mounted Temple Guard. I'm going to come in from the rear with my mounted Numenorian Shield Guard, try and even the odds a little bit. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to do too much damage to them, since the the Citadel Guard rather managed to turn around in the face of my mounted Numenorian Shield Guard's charge, and I think I'm going to lose like 5 or 6 of my horses there. So ultimately, just not worth it for me. This small unit of Mornon Guard who has come back from routing, I'm using them to just kind of tie up the Ramessekor garrison for as long as I can, and yeah, again, try and swing this infantry fight back in my favor. So you can see a little bit of routing here. Even the mounted, or even the Cariandros Swordmasters were routed, I think, by a charge from my mounted Temple Inquisitor. So very potent the fear ability that these guys have, and that's helping me kind of turn the fight around here on my right wing, which is really where I set myself up to try and win this fight. Mounted Temple Inquisitor is getting another big charge there into the front of the Ramessekor garrison archers, and that's going to be real devastating for Gondor. Those that shock damage there, plus the fear, is actually going to cause these guys to potentially rout real soon. A counter charge here from WK with the rest of his Ramessekor infantry garrison, and that's going to risk my my mounted Temple Inquisitors here being overwhelmed just by the sheer number of Gondor infantry. So I'm trying to bring in some of my surviving infantry from my right flank to push back here against the Gondorians. I've managed to surround one of his units of Guards of Osgiliath, but the other unit, very healthy unit indeed, coming in and support, and they're going to be able to essentially encircle my entire push here. So things looking pretty grim for me, especially with more of these Gondorian reinforcements coming in. So I'm going to try and delay their advance as long as possible with my mounted Númenórean Shield Guard. Another volley there from my Orc Javelins into the long axis here of the Guards of Osgiliath. Going to claim a few of their lives, but ultimately it's not going to do too much damage. But I do manage to rout this Ramsecor garrison here with my mounted Númenóreans. With that big charge from the rear, that Ramsecor garrison was just not able to hold together, and they are now going to start fleeing off the battlefield. Over here, I'm using my other unit of mounted Númenórean Shield Guard to try and thin out some of his elite corps, because his elites are really, really deadly, and I need to do as much damage to them as possible if I'm going to have any opportunity to win this fight, especially with the numbers that he has at his disposal right now. I'm actually outnumbered by a fair amount. Another unit of Ramsecor garrison coming around on this end, along with the Sons of the Argonath, looking like WK wants to complete that surround entirely, and then in that kind of situation, my Uruks will break and flee at the slightest provocation. So really, it's all down to my Númenóreans, and I think that's my general going down right there. Very, very bad for me. And if indeed that was my general, I think that my Uruks are not going to be able to stand up to that morale shock for too much longer. But luckily, I've still got my Númenóreans, and as I mentioned in the earlier in the army comps, these guys can stand up to just about anything in terms of morale shocks. They have locked morale. Yeah, very, very powerful. Pelargon Marines there getting a nice shot on my Númenórean Shield Guard, but unfortunately they're going to get sandwiched by a Vengeful unit and some reinforcements coming in from the rear, and that's going to be all she wrote for those Pelargon Marines. So we're slowly but surely managing to pick apart some of the more important assets from WK's army, and that is really, I think, what's keeping us in the game at this point. Now over here, my Orc Javelins getting stuck in with the Carandros Swordmasters. Oh, that is not going to be a fun fight for them. My Orc Javelins are going to fall apart, but luckily for me, the Gondor General has gone down. So what that means is that his rank and file, like his Ramsecor garrison, yeah, you can see some breaking here right now, are not going to be able to stand and fight for too much longer. It's really down to WK's elites, of which he has quite a number left. But yeah, a lot of these Ramsecor garrison here breaking and fleeing from that fight. Again, it's only the Guards of Osgiliath and the more elite units that are able to stand strong. A rear charge here, or an attempt at a rear charge from my Númenórean Shield Guard, is going to be pushed back by the timely intervention of some of these Guards of Osgiliath. But I think they almost routed, they were in danger of routing there, so I'm going to try my own surround here with some of my elites, some of my Númenóreans. I still got my Númenórean Shadow Guard, and of course, my Temple Guard. Very, very deadly hybrid troops here. They whip out their two-handed swords in close quarters, so they're going to be more than a match for some of these more elite, very battered Gondorian units. But now, Gondor has really committed heavily here and destroyed pretty much the main body of my infantry. But I am going to have a fairly unique opportunity to shoot into him with some fire arrows, and then surround him with my own cavalry and my own remaining ground troops as well. So yeah, let's speed it up just a little bit here. You can see my cavalry just running amok in the back, trying to thin out some of these elite forces as best as they can. Another big charge there into the Carandros Swordmasters. My mounted Númenórean Shield Guard are going to be forced to flee, but another charge is going to come in before they have a chance to recover, and that is going to be very, very devastating. That's going to be the end, I think, for those Carandros Swordmasters, down from like 30 to like 4 in just a few moments. Mounted Númenórean Númenórean Shadow Guard, rather, still firing into those Guards of Osgiliath. Really one of the bigger threats at this point. I know how strong pikes can be from the front, and I don't really have the numbers to be able to surround them, except over here. My loose formation Temple Guard managing to get the better, I think, of this smaller unit of Guards of Osgiliath. I'm going to be constantly harassing his backlines with my cavalry, trying to prevent him from presenting a united front with all that remains of his infantry. So I managed to delay their advance a little bit there, and that's going to be enough, I think, to give my Temple Guard here the advantage that they need and allow them to cut down yet more of those Guards of Osgiliath. So now it looks like WK is going to be setting up his spears to protect his backline. So I'm going to come in with my Númenórean Shadow Guards and try and make an opening for my cavalry. I'm going to just charge in there as much as I can with my cavalry, and that one unit of Guards of Osgiliath is actually going to break and flee because of that morale shock. So slowly but surely we have somehow managed to even out the fight here with Gondor, who had some really fearsome elite units at their disposal, and a lot of it really comes down to our cavalry. So at this point, I kind of just wanted to see how the infantry fight would go, so my cavalry are just going to reform and hang back and fairly, I guess, quote-unquote honorably, just watch the infantry fight go down and see who ends up coming out on top. And I think I've actually still got a couple of Nazgul in there as well, so it's pretty obvious, I think, that this is going to go in my favor. The Sons of the Argonath fighting very bravely along all that remains of the Osgiliath Spearmen, but the Osgiliath Spearmen are going to lose heart, begin to flee off the field, and that's going to leave the Sons of the Argonath in a real bad position. So slowly but surely, My Númenóreans here have surrounded them, and they are grinding down all the remains of the valiant men of the White City. And that is going to be pretty much the end of the Gondorian army. I think I've got some cavalry. No, I thought it was running down some of the routing troops, or maybe some of them that were reforming. But this is indeed all that remains of WK's force, and I think he's going to pull out like 2 Sons of Argonaut there and go for a charge against my cavalry not having any of it. Their restraint was very much tested by that. They're going to charge into all that remains of the Gondor infantry, and that is going to be a very, very narrow victory for the forces of Mordor. I think in that battle you can really see, I mean, even if Gondor did lose, you can really see the quality there versus the Mordor's quantity. Even amongst their lower tier units, they managed to quite handily defeat not just my Orc fodder, but also my supporting Uruks as well. And in the end, it came down to a fight between our 2 elites, and the fact that I had more cavalry remaining at the end was what allowed me to pull out a very narrow victory there. So a great game to WK. Hope you guys enjoy this, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye!